Guys, what is going on? I'm John Anthony. Thank you for joining me. Chair Shot Sports, an affiliate of SportsCoin. Guys, wrestling has been hot, hot, hot. But aside from anything going on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, one of the biggest documentaries and one of the most controversial ones to drop in a long time just dropped on Netflix, the Mr. McMahon Documentary, a 6-episode series bound to have a lot of stuff in there, a lot of interviews, a lot of information that none of us have ever heard before, especially from the chairman of the board himself, Vince McMahon. Obviously, there's a lot in there. I can't talk about it myself, so I brought a few friends with me to talk about it tonight. First of all, I want to bring out my man from Believe Network, podcast host, Matt Trigger. Matt, how we doing, man? How we doing?
John, what's going on, man? It's good to see you.
Likewise, man. It's been a minute. Happy to have you.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Also, thank you, man. I appreciate you taking the time. Also, too, a good co-host of mine from the Sports Entertainment Center, my man Vinny from the Suds and Squared Circle Media. Well, I brought Justin first. Vinny, hey, how's it going?
Hey, what's going on? I'm happy to be here and talking about this very polarizing documentary.
Very polarizing. I appreciate you taking the time. And obviously, jumping a little earlier than usual, Princess Skywalker, the host of The Lowdown with Princess Skywalker, my girl Jess. How we doing?
Good. Glad to be here tonight. Thank you for having me on. Excited to talk about the episode and dive into everything.
So obviously, we all know a lot of stuff. Some of us have already gone through to watch 2, 3, 4, 5 episodes. We're going to stick to the first one today. That'll be a lot of information to cover and a lot of stuff we want to talk about. But we've got to save the juicy stuff for when it's needed. So that'll be later on in the next couple of weeks. But this first episode that came out kind of walked a lot of people. If you weren't familiar with WWE, kind of what they do and what they did. This one was episode 1 called Junior. Obviously talking about Vince McMahon taking over from Vince McMahon Sr., how he met his dad, all that good stuff, and eventually taking over the WWF, now WWE. So before we get into anything specific, any guests, any interviews that they did, any quotes, I'm just going to go around the room. I'll start with Jess. Just give me your overall feel of how you thought the episode came across to you.
It came across as expected. Really just the way McMahon is portrayed in the episode is exactly how I'd expect him to be. The information that came out doesn't shock me at all. It sounds exactly like a way that Vince McMahon would do things. The most interesting thing that I thought about the very beginning of it was his quote that said, "I don't want anyone to really know me. So I'll give you enough to make it interesting, but I don't want anyone to really know me." And that just sums up Vince McMahon.
No, I agree. It was the fact, I think, they got him. He said, "I wish I could give you the good ones." And like, go ahead. He's like, no. I don't want, I'm not going to tell you, but I'll give you enough to make it semi-interesting. No, that was definitely a telling quote of how it's going to go the next 5 episodes. Vinny, how'd you feel about everything?
You know, the first episode, it really was nothing new. Like, it was all stories we had heard before. I had done actually a college project on Vince McMahon, so I did know a little bit more of his backstory, regarding his upbringing with his, mother and stepfather. Nothing that they would get into later on, but ultimately it was nothing new. It was, I didn't like the fact that, he didn't give Howard Finkel credit for coining the term WrestleMania. I thought that could have been a nice little nod to the first employee of the WWE. But outside of that, I mean, he came off as, just like Jess said, he doesn't want people to know who he really is. And I found that, an interesting quote as well. And it also blurs the line of what's real and what's fake.
No, I agree. He definitely wants to keep that line like very much blurred. And I think that's a lot of things that go on. Even now today, when you hear something, you go, well, yeah, that's Vince. But is it Vince or is it the one you see on TV? But
right.
With that being said, Matt, how did you enjoy episode 1?
I enjoyed it. It in typical fashion, I think Netflix has really taken over the epicenter of documentaries. It kind of had an initial 30 for 30 feel to it, with the way they set up the interviews and how they had the angles for everybody sitting down in just like a random warehouse or however they wanted to set it up. I did not like the fact that Netflix had to put out in the first few minutes of the show that this was all done before the controversy and the bombshell dropped. So you're getting a lot of Vince McMahon fluff early on from a lot of different people. Hogan's never going to talk bad about McMahon. No matter what happens, Hogan is going to always be Team Vince because in many ways McMahon was the machine behind Hogan for so long, and he owes a lot of his success to the platform that Vince gave him. But I
100%.
I didn't really I didn't watch any other episodes. When you told me that you wanted me to come on the show to to preview the first episode, I stuck to the first episode because I know myself. I would have sat in my house and after I got home from work today, I would have watched every episode I could leading up to this show. I didn't want to convolute it, so I'm basing it off of seeing the first 51 minutes.
Awesome.
And I feel like it's going to be disingenuous because what Vince is going through in real time right now isn't going to be done justice because of the lawsuit. And I feel like it's going to be a skewed representation. But that was my initial thought. It was very Hogan heavy.
Very Hogan heavy. And I think someone forgot to tell Bret Hart this wasn't about him. This documentary is about Vince McMahon. It was very, very Hogan
my
heavy.
issue with my issues with Bret are a lot. Yeah. Bret is so bitter. I almost didn't want Bret to be involved with this, but I know he can't help himself.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Him or Ryback. It's a combination of putting those two guys in a room to see who can be more bitter with each other. It's nuts. With that being said,
problem is that he's just too self-absorbed. Ryback is bitter, but he's not as self-absorbed as Bret is.
No, I agree with that. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Some of us have watched.
Just like he's said in episode 1 that he was one of the best to ever do it.
Yep. And then, like I said, I don't want to talk about other episodes.
Bret the top 25 wrestlers of all time. Maybe it's just me. I'm young. I'm the younger, wrestling fan. I grew up in the Attitude Era, and I missed when Hart was the WWE champion. I was still very young. I really started getting into wrestling in 96, 97. So by that time, he would already kind of they started transitioning into the Attitude Era. But
Hart was always jealous of Hogan. Hart has always been jealous of Hogan. That's the biggest problem.
It is a huge problem. It is a huge problem. But the thing is, when I was 8 years old, I didn't care about technical wrestling skills. I wanted to be entertained. And Bret Hart was like listening to paint dry.
Yeah. That's what I mean. It had a good resonation at the time, but then you see him and you're like, you listen to him talk and you're like, are you done? Are you done? Who's going to come out and interrupt this guy? Can we get somebody else in the ring? He wasn't even
the best wrestler in his family.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
In the ring, he could get it done. You put a mic in his hand. You're like, no. What are we doing? Don't do that.
Like the whole anti-American shtick, like the Canadian pride, all that was all cool for the time period, I guess. But, hindsight being 2020, we're in, 20 years, 25 years removed from that whole scenario with him. And it's like, he elevated and made everybody else look a lot better during that time because he was such a fantastic wrestler. But
agreed.
He never was like, I never sat down and said, "Oh, I have to watch a Bret Hart match on YouTube or go on the network and say, let me look up like a Bret Hart match." I'm going to Stone Cold. I'm going to The Rock. I'm going to HBK.
The best of Bret Hart.
Yeah. The best of Bret Hart. Exactly. If I needed to fall asleep, you got me.
To be perfectly honest, and this is hand on my kids, man.
The best of Bret Hart was the end.
No, for real. It really was. She's not wrong.
Oh, I popped when Gunther said that his favorite wrestler was Goldberg.
That was that line. I don't know who wrote that. If he did it himself, dude, he needs that. That's a Slammy Award. Someone give him that at the end of the year. That was amazing. You guys all know who you guys know. I meet wrestlers. I've met a lot of them up and down. You see the belt that's sitting here right now. If you notice, this is a Bret Hart. But it's a Bret Hart exclusive belt. I spent money on this.
I see the pink now. The pink now. Okay.
I was gonna meet Bret Hart. I met Bret Hart. Now I had my reservations. You asked me. The biggest thing is Shawn Michaels or Bret Hart. Shawn Michaels all day. But I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm giving him a bad rap.
Shawn Michaels. The
worst person I've ever met in my life that I've spent money for and actually bought a belt for them, their own belt. It was like talking to a wall. He didn't look at me in the eye. Didn't talk. Bret, such a big fan. Great to meet you. Wrote the littlest. I want to start flipping it around. The littlest you could write, Bret Hitman Hart over here. He handed me the belt back, and that was it. Got a picture with him, obviously.
I know, and it's very block like letters. I've seen his autograph.
Yeah, that small. Not even. And I'm not trying to get like a pat on the back. Hey, oh my God, my belt. But Jesus, man, I spent a lot of money on this to meet you. Really? And it was just. But that was the nail in the coffin for me with Bret Hart, man. I was like, this guy doesn't care about the fans. He's there to get a money grab. He's there to just, okay, yeah, cool. Sign the autograph, take the picture, go home.
Yeah.
Not to dive too deep into the Bret Hart.
I met him in.
It's crazy. I'm sorry, Jess. I apologize. I apologize.
It's all good. No. Just when you meet him.
No, you're good. There's a delay. It happens when there's a ton of people on at the same time. I met Bret Hart when he was in WCW. And when WCW used to tour around and they'd bring people places and you'd get to meet people and stuff, I actually took my grandmother to see him because he loved her. Or she loved him. She absolutely adored Bret Hart. He was like her favorite ever. I've got a picture of my grandma with him. It's a great like memory or everything, but he wasn't anything spectacular. And he was just kind of like, but.
Yep. Like I met, like I said,
it was him and Conan.
Oh wow,
Conan's awesome.
But yeah, it's just, and again, I get it. Like you're tired, you got to meet all these people. I'm not expecting you to be like glad handled and just. I get it, man. You're there to get a buck. I get it, but just like you give a shit. I just spent a lot of money to meet you. Like a little bit of will be cool, But I digress. So enough about beating up on Bret. That's.
I got one more. I got one more thing, John.
Go ahead.
I got one more thing. For years, Bret Hart has blamed Goldberg for hurting him with that kick. If anybody goes back and watches that match, Bret Hart did a figure 4 leg lock on the ring post to Goldberg and smacked his head against the pole and the cement floor. And that was what set everything in motion. He hurt himself. It just so happens he called a straight kick from Bret hurt himself. And then he's been spending 3 decades blaming Goldberg. We know Goldberg's a shit wrestler, and that's an easy out. But bro, you hurt yourself.
Yeah,
come on.
That's a good catch. That's not a lie spoken there. Absolutely. So enough about Bret. We got 2 more. Episode 3. Spoiler alert. We get a lot about him. Don't worry about it. We will talk about it. So the biggest thing I want to ask is obviously all of us know. Aside from this documentary, all of us watch wrestling. All of us know the story, career, and leadership of Vince and Kennedy McMahon. We know the scandals from back in the 80s all the way to 2023. Obviously, in these interviews, you're getting a real live look at Vince. Now, this is before anything has come out. They're talking about his family. They're talking about a lot of personal things that he doesn't like talking about, doesn't like pulling the curtain back on. Now, you've seen his emotion. You've seen him like talking real time, getting choked up, things like that. Seeing that kind of emotion and seeing that kind of stuff, does it make you, I'm not saying feel bad for the man, but if you understand him talking about his father, having the life he had with his mother, and this isn't talking about the scandals. I'm talking about the upbringing he had and getting into this business and kind of using this business. I feel like he used this as a cover or more so to just kind of be the man he wanted to be. That's who Mr. McMahon was. The Vince McMahon, I don't think we'll ever know. I think there's a lot of trauma there. There's a lot of stuff to unpack for him. But what are your feelings about the Vincent McMahon, the person, not the chairman, not the Mr. McMahon character you see that walks down the aisle into the ring? After watching episode 1, just episode 1, and not taking into account things that happened recently, obviously in real time, What are your thoughts of that man watching him, your initial reactions, and how you feel about seeing him being that vulnerable and being that kind of emotional on camera at that time? And we'll start with Vinny.
You said seeing him vulnerable. That's a loaded statement because I don't think Vince will ever allow himself to be vulnerable, or he'll only allow himself to be as vulnerable that he's willing to be. Yeah, he'll talk about his father because his father was a public figure. And, he talked about how, he was abused by his stepfather, physically and mentally, because of just the relationship. He didn't even know his last name was McMahon until he was 12 years old. Which is even something that was news to me. I did not realize that. Honestly, there's a lot to Vince that if it was happening today, everybody would be like, oh, well, get into therapy, get into this to help yourself feel and get your emotions out. This was, he's in his 70s. Back 50, 60 years ago when he was growing up, nobody really cared about the people's mental health. So you have to kind of put yourself in that lens. I feel like a lot of his work ethic, a lot of him wanting to work, 20 hours a day and sleep 4 hours a day, and all his idiosyncrasies come from a way to keep control because he had no control growing up. And so whenever he had the opportunity to control, no matter how devious and bad and evil it was later on in his life, he wanted to just keep that control because he knew if he controlled it, it would go his way. And it got him into a lot of trouble, but he wanted to have that control because he never had it.
It's funny you say that too, because whether it's lore or it's true, he's been on record apparently saying he hates sneezing because it's an involuntary action that he cannot control.
Yep.
Wild. Jess, what are your feelings on it?
I definitely don't feel sorry for him. That's a background that a lot of people have. There's a lot of people that don't meet their fathers until they're older. I mean, I'm not one of them. There's a lot of people who were mentally and physically abused by their parents growing up. Not that I'm saying it's okay or that it's excusable what happened, but it doesn't necessarily make me feel sorry for him. And I don't know if that's more because I know what kind of person he turned into. And so it kind of, I can't get that unbiased opinion of him because I know what he turned into. But like Vinny said about the control, is he always has to be in control of everything. And that's the way he's always ran the WWE is he has to be in control of everything. The storylines, the characters, their fucking personal lives, their Twitter, their everything. They can't make money outside of the WWE. They can't, do any of that shit. And I definitely agree with Vinny that it is a coping mechanism of some sort to, because he didn't have control ever growing up, but he took it to the extreme with the control. And that's one thing that I've, kind of noticed in the documentary, especially the more it went on. He was a fucking control freak and he had to control everything. He had to dominate everyone else. And that 100% could come from being abused when he was a kid. That need to have to dominate other people because somebody dominated over him for 12 years. So, but it doesn't make me feel sorry for him.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's one of those things where a lot of wrestlers and a lot of talent that have worked for the WWF, WWE have left because they had Twitters, they had Twitch. Xavier Woods had to fight tooth and nail to get up, down, down to stay so he could stream video games because Vince thought he was making money. It was, no, I'm just playing video games, bro. And that's how he was able to keep that. And because of that, they actually made a title. That's how the title came about. But anyway, but no, it was crazy how much in control he had to be. Matt, what were your thoughts on that?
I kind of align more with what Jess was saying as opposed to Vinny, and it's no knock to Vinny because I do agree with him in the sense that back in the 60s and the 70s, mental health wasn't taken into effect or into consideration, especially for men, just because of the era and the connotation to what a man was back then, as opposed to right this second.
Stigma.
Yeah, definitely a stigma, but. To kind of go off what Jess was saying, when you have this situation where we see how much of a control freak Vince has been and the stories that have leaked out for years, and with the curtain being pulled back more, with the kayfabe being dead for probably a decade now, close to it, how much of that was manufactured by Vince, knowing that he has a lot of skeletons and a lot of dead bodies in the backyard, so to speak, to where he wanted to play the sympathy of his upbringing. It ended up making him an egomaniac, a narcissist, a control freak. So, yes, I sympathize and empathize with the rough childhood because not everybody's dealt a good hand. But when you end that whole line of living and you're a 70-year-old plus multi-billionaire that has the biggest wrestling company in the entire planet, it's really hard for me to feel sorry for you when you're sitting on $9 billion. Even in the face of all the controversy right now, he still has more money than he can spend in 4 lifetimes. So I see the human element that you guys want to talk about, John, and I see that, you're trying to separate the two, but this man has altered reality for millions of wrestling fans for years, and he has wanted us to see things in his way for decades. So to me, the harsh upbringing, and then you float that right into killing the territories and the rise of Hulk Hogan, that there's no middle ground for the in-between. We went from the hard childhood, the rough childhood with Vince Sr., straight to him taking over for his dad and then killing every territory that he came across. I know we're going to talk about it in the show, but they did the rough childhood, and then they're talking about him going to the AWA and the MWA and literally buying their biggest talents within 6 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
can't really feel too bad for you, buddy.
It's like they want you to feel sorry for him. Yeah, they want you to feel sorry for him. But then all of a sudden it's like, oh, he starts out with some fucked up shit already. As soon as he takes over the company, the first thing he did,
He killed the territories the minute he became in charge.
The second he took over.
So it's great that you guys
ADHD moment.
No. That's exactly where I was going to go with this. But no, you hit on the. But again, out of what the 3 of you have just said, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is exactly, I think, what Netflix is trying to do. I know Vince put out a tweet about it to get in front of it. He didn't know what the finished product was going to be. Along with the rest of us, he just knew what was taped and what he said. I mean, it was like, okay, well, my dad didn't know him, and my mom in the trailer park. And by the way, when my dad gave me the business, I went in, I took all the big ones, and I ate it up because I'm in entertainment. Whoa, you can't have it both ways, bro. You can't just go, you went that way. We're just going to brush over the other 10 years. You just all of a sudden become the owner. You paid 4 payments to your dad, and you bought the company who thought, and then you're just like, well, my dad thought I was going to fail. But you didn't, and then you go and you just buy up all the AWA and all of them. But that's
the biggest problem that I see with this is Netflix released this Vince McMahon documentary after the controversy, didn't really alter the trajectory of the documentary itself, and then WWE is going to Netflix for Monday Night Raw in 3 months.
Yes.
Do you really think they're going to put an absolute hit piece out on Vince McMahon, knowing that they're laying in bed with his son-in-law?
Yeah.
But see,
the next 5 to 10 years for billions?
Right.
Yeah.
But see, I think that was planned perfectly. And the reason why I say that is because you got to think that Nick Khan, Ari Emanuel, and all them had advanced copies of the documentary. Because the rumor came out that Vince, it wasn't even a rumor, but Vince tried to buy the documentary to squash it. Had Ari Emanuel call to try to get the documentary
Footage
as well.
back.
Great, get the footage back so that they couldn't release it. I think, and this might have been done without Ari knowing, but I think that Nick Khan and the people in charge of TKO of the WWE side, I think they're all the more happy to put this out there to almost kind of put that final sever in a tie between WWE and Vince. WWE is going to Netflix. It's a new generation, Paul Levesque era, and now this is being like, you know what? Vince no longer has anything to do with it. And we're so behind this that, you know what? We're going to show this because WWE is confident it's a new era and it's a new thing and we have nothing to do more.
No, I agree. That's why it was so weird to me. I'm like, they're going in 3 months from now. They're going to be airing on Monday nights, and they're doing this documentary. There's no way, to quote Conrad Thompson, that it was going to be a double burial of where you're going to put down Vince McMahon and also bury the WWE, a product which you just spent $5 billion on to have on your Monday nights, and let alone probably the PLEs down the road once that contract expires with Peacock. Matt hit the nail on the head a little earlier when we started talking about everything. This is a very Hogan heavy episode. In that talking about obviously Hogan, him getting very Hogan. This is wild. It's almost like a Hogan documentary. Hogan being brought in, being built up, taking the belt off of Backlund, being the new champion to run for the WWF, WWE. In regards to like the territories and things like that, how do you feel about how Vince went about and this is just like how your feelings, how if you would do it differently. Just, I mean, there's no really way you can do it differently because I don't think we would get the WWF that we have today on a global, or I should say national stage at that time. But how do you feel as far as him going through and kind of, there used to be a good old boy, shake hands, you stay out of my yard, I'll stay out of yours. And Vince kind of coming in and spitting in the face of that and kind of just being like, no, this is my time now and I'm taking all of this over. Vinny, how you feel about that?
I mean, you can look at it two ways. You can look at it, he came into a business steeped in tradition and handshake deals and everything, and went against the grain. Or you could look at it, he saw where things were going with cable TV, with the global reach of entertainment, and he just took it to the next natural evolution. However, at the same time, it goes back to the control thing. His father gave him one portion one arena to book, the Cape Cod Coliseum, just to be like, hey, here, you try this, see if you like it. If you like it, we'll go from there. And then, you know what he did? He bought the company using the money that was being generated from the events. So he didn't even put out any real money to buy the company. The only time that he really had to put up his own money was WrestleMania. But at that point in time, we'll get to that at another time.
Yep.
I think that he came in and he saw where entertainment and where TV was going, and said, you know what, wrestling has to go with it, and just brought it to the next stage.
Matt, what are your thoughts?
This is where I separated Vince the person from Vince the wrestling promoter and business owner. Because for all of Vince's faults and all of his current issues and woes, he was a visionary. He saw what was coming. And I'm going to equate it to somebody else. Now, on the personal side, they're nothing alike. But former Cleveland Browns and Baltimore Ravens owner Art Modell was a visionary. He was the one that put football on Monday nights.
Yep.
and he's the one that got the TV contracts to generate income for the NFL. So I see it as that, where he made something that was local to one part of the world, to the country. He literally went out and got the best deal possible for every big name star, put them all under one roof, and then built what we see today. Now, if he doesn't do that, do we have the Attitude Era? Do we have the Ruthless Aggression Era? Do we have, the oncoming of AEW? Is it still in the stages of being a worldwide phenomenon now, as opposed to it being that 20 years ago during the Attitude Era and the beginning of the Ruthless Aggression Era? So there's a lot that you can say about what ifs, and maybe it would be this way. Mm-hmm. He set forward one of the most prolific, series of events for a niche market. Pro wrestling is not for everybody. You got to really be passionate about it. If you're a casual, it's because you know the popular guys. But for those of us, everybody in here is a fanatic of it in some way. The three of you guys talk about it on air every time you step in front of your mics. It's about wrestling. Mm-hmm. To a degree. Mm-hmm. John, 85% of your shows are wrestling based. Yep. And to do it, you have to consume a lot of it from a lot of companies. So we owe that to Vince. No matter how you want to shake it, it is still him. That's where it begins and ends. And that's a hard pill to swallow when you know everything about him that's coming out now in the Janelle Grant situation. Yeah. So that's you got to compartmentalize your fandom and your emotions and your logic when you're watching this.
I think I don't go too deep into like current events and bringing into this, but it's I think we're at a time right now where obviously in social media everybody knows everything. It's really hard to keep your skeletons buried, keeping your closet and not let anyone know where the bodies are. I think we're in a time when we got to look at someone like Vince McMahon and Sean Combs and people like that, and people you look up to and you like, oh my God, these people are awesome. And then something comes out and you're like, there's this other side to them. And you're like, what am I supposed to believe? Or what am I supposed to think? Because I like this person. Obviously for all four of us, I mean, me included, I mean, all of us have been wrestling has been a part of my life the whole time. I can give me a time in my life, high school, college, where I'm working. I can integrate some kind of wrestling I've had, and I can like compare it. It's been a part of my life. So to look at Vince and to hear, I have 2 daughters. Okay, like to hear these things come out, and I go, oh man, wow, right. I really love wrestling. And this guy he basically was like, because he made my childhood.
He helped raise us.
Well, what's up?
He helped raise us in a way.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, and it's just like, it's so wild. And again, I'm not trying to go on that topic, but to bring like someone like Sean Combs and like that's out there, and then something drops where you're like, what? Are you kidding me? I mean, so this is why I think like, after this episode and like we start talking about 2, 3, 4, and we dive a little more into the Mr. McMahon gimmick that they kind of give a little more light to, I'll say. It's just like, wow, man, like damn. But
yeah,
it's tough.
And when you're talking about wrestling raising us, Jess, I've talked to John on his show a couple of different times now. When I was in high school in 2003, the invasion just happened with WWF and WCW. So that was like the time period. And then I kind of got a little ticked off once I saw Rick and Sting and Goldberg and all them didn't get there until a couple years after the AOL Time Warner stuff. Yep. But I remember the first time I talked to a girl in high school and she's like, what do you like watching? I said, I watch like Raw and SmackDown. And she's like, you watch wrestling? You're a dork. And I'm like, shit. I'm like, shit. So I stopped watching from 2003 until about 2011, where I'm sitting in my apartment, and I told John this story. I was sitting in my apartment, I'm flipping through stations, and I see Total Divas on E, and I'm like, who are these women? And then they went to a clip of Natalya and Nikki Bella training. I'm like, let me turn on Raw tomorrow night, and then I got hooked again.
3 of my relationships in my life have been because of wrestling.
I went so far when Yeah, I went so far when I was in 7th grade that I told everybody that Macho Man was my dad. And I was adopted.
Nice.
Macho Man was my dad. Elizabeth was my mom, and I was
That's
adopted.
wild. That is
That's okay.
wild.
I can keep that.
Nice.
When I was growing up in grade school, my grandmother told me that my grandfather trained all the wrestlers and she would be their wrestling buddy. So, of course, I went to school telling all my friends that my grandparents trained all the wrestlers. And that
probably broke
I'll
your
never
heart.
live that one down.
Probably
well,
broke your heart when you realized it wasn't true.
And I made X-Pac a pedophile, poor guy, because I was engaged to him, and I was 12.
Oh. Hey,
That's all right.
he probably would have believed you if you said you were 19.
Trish and Lita were my first crushes in wrestling. Trish and Lita. And then Mickey James was a very close third.
Oh,
But
I
before we
just
move,
like-
my
Mickey
girl
James.
crush.
was it Matt?
I missed the Mickey James situation. I was already departed into trying to not be a nerd by the time Mickey James became popular.
You want to talk? So I met her this spring. Like my wife's, she's like, your face is totally red right now. I'm like, shut up. I'm like, hi, Mickey. She's like, hi. I'm like, hi. She's like, look at you. You're so like, yeah, stop it. Just sign the belt and take the picture. I gotta go. Like, I can't.
I gotta go.
But, I gotta go.
Don't ask me to stand up, honey.
You're right. Jess, I didn't get your answer as far as the territories and Vince taking over the way he did building WWF.
So there was something that Matt said that I was gonna, kind of pile off of, and that's something that I was gonna say too, is that as much as with all the scandals and all the bullshit coming out about Vince McMahon now, and I know we're trying to separate it, but it's really hard to do it. If it wasn't for Vince McMahon, wrestling would not be what it is today. There would have been no WCW. There would be no AEW. Wrestling would have died in the 80s if it hadn't have been for Vince McMahon and WrestleMania, which we'll get to. But if it wasn't for that man, none of us would have had this outlet. None of us would have had this hobby or have anything to talk about because it wouldn't be around. It wouldn't be as successful as it is right now. So whereas it was distasteful that he went in and just abolished everything and took everything over and monopolized it, if he hadn't have done that, we wouldn't have what we have today. So it's a conflicting thing because, yeah, it was shitty. He goes in, he buys up all the territory, he, invades all the territories, buys up all their talent, and then he becomes this mega billionaire off of it while all these other companies get crushed. But like he said, that's America. If you can't compete, you go away. That's just how it is.
But see, he also did go to the other promoters originally to see if they wanted to work with him. And then when they said no, because that was the whole premise behind the NWA, was that all the promoters got together, they decided on a world champion, but most of the time they couldn't work together. Everybody had their own ego and nobody wanted to, do the job or whatever the case was. You know how many NWA title changes were never recognized, whether it be in Japan, whether it be in Singapore, whether it be in any other territory, because there was no television. But now, once cable TV came out, they realized, Vince realized that it would be much bigger. And like Jess said, if he didn't do it, wrestling would have died because there would not have been enough cable for multiple territories on wrestling. That's the unfortunate truth to the matter. So there's a lot of conflicting feelings in wrestling from a lot of different people. Vince is only one of them, but I still feel that Vince, like everybody else, if it wasn't for Vince, there would be no wrestling today.
Yeah, and Matt,
I'm
like
going to
just,
take off, guys. You guys keep on going, but I got to get to bed. I got to be up early.
all right, Vinny, thank you so much. Before you get out of
Thanks,
here,
Vinny.
you want to just let everyone know where they can find you real quick?
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter at Suds Media. And then go to my website, suds-media.com. That's where all of my podcasts are. And but the best way to get a hold of me is at Suds Media on Twitter. And just follow everything from there. It's been great meeting with you guys, and look forward to it for next week as well.
Awesome. We'll have you here next week. Thank you so much, Vinny.
Yep, thank
Hi,
you.
Vinny.
Good seeing you, Vinny.
So like Matt said too, like just hit on it. Like, Matt, you were talking about like he got all the big names, he got them great deals. That was without that happening, there's no one to jump to World Championship Wrestling to become the WCW, to get turned and be like, oh, wait a minute, what are we doing here? And then Eric Bischoff, and then obviously the Wars, and then
I don't think Gagne had it in him to do that.
No, I don't think so either. I think Vince just kind of, like, again, it was one of those things where I think he came in. But the question I was going to ask, and it sucks Vinny left. I know he had to go, but do you think – I wanted your opinions on this, because do you think deep down, and again, watching everything that happened in episode 1, do you think deep down getting these territories and making this a national conglomerate looking to close circuit and go into pay-per-views, do you think deep down Vince was trying to do this for some sort of acceptance from his dad? We talk about him never saying "I love you," never acknowledging how good he did until the end, where he said, "Oh, these guys were assholes." They don't believe.
In spite of it. It was in spite of it.
Okay, that's a good take. I like that.
It was spite as opposed to the yearning, because I don't see McMahon being the type of person, just based on what we know about him, which is probably 30 to 40% of who he really is.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to listen to him tell it that way, but I don't think he's reaching for his dad's success. I think he was trying to shove this down his dad's throat. And
Like, I'm better than you.
Yeah.
And he proved it right away with the success of WrestleMania 1, and then turning it into where you not only had one television show every week, you now have 3 television shows every week, plus one premium live event per month. You have an international footprint.
Yep.
It's you're all over the world now. And so to me, that was like, oh, I don't need your acceptance. I'm going to show you what you could have done that I'm going to do. So it was in spite of Vince Sr. as opposed to wanting Vince Sr. to love him. Because I think McMahon could go through life without anybody loving him, because he loves himself so damn much.
That's a very true statement. That's very,
Absolutely.
That makes sense too, because obviously Vince Sr. did it where they were like, okay, you pay me so much this time, you make these payments on time. If you don't, I keep the money and take the company back, and you have nothing. So the fact of that almost being like, okay, F you, man. The only thing I can do this, let me do it. So yeah.
Well, and Senior didn't like the fact that he was taking over the territories either. He didn't like his business practices and the way he was going about things.
I think he told him, Vinny, don't rock the boat, is what he said. I think that was the quote Vince gave.
Yeah. Well, and then it sounds like, he was getting threatened by, mafia and all kinds of stuff, when he said that it was people that like bottom of the rivers. So that's what I got out of that.
That was a good quote.
Which is crazy.
Coming from my family background.
Pro wrestling. Come on. Come on.
These guys had a lot of money. If you guys
want you to fix something that's already fixed anyway.
Right, yeah.
Come on, let's be real about it. It's not the NFL. It's not the Major League Baseball. It's
whoa, careful with the NFL. Careful.
Present day, we've had that conversation.
Careful.
Unless it's a Chiefs game.
Don't get Matt started.
I'm not going to do it, Jess. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Anyway, but to touch on what Jess was saying about the territories, I give it a different analogy, and it's kind of like present day United States government. You have all these people in Congress that essentially run our country, and they can't decide on anything about the betterment of the nation.
Anything.
So did you really think that a bunch of territory wrestling federation owners were going to get together and then decide on the greater good for the country. No, they were going to decide on the greater good for them. So to me, that's where I equate this. Like, somebody had to take it over, and it just so happened to be the most egomaniacal person in the entire history of the business.
That could do it. But he did it well.
Having that mind for it to just come in and have, like, I feel like he was just destined for something like this. It was like he took to it like a fish to water. It was like, oh, okay, business is cool. Well, you take a look, and then just the way he just went off. But again, to go back to what we've been talking about, without his vision and to what he did with WrestleMania to make it mainstream, Cyndi Lauper, Mr. T, all these guys to make it and to bring MTV into this, Lou Albano being in the video and then having him shoot in Piper's Pit, like the vision to have that, we wouldn't have what we have today. We'd have something. It would not be the conglomerate and the global entity that is WWE.
I think it
all strains. I mean, in the 90s, but we can all talk about this. I mean, not even after, probably during the wars, a little after, like Saturday Night Live, commercials, daytime television, sitcoms, soap operas. Vinny's not here for it. These stars were everywhere on your television. They were running Saturday Night Main Event. Now you saw these guys in prime time. Vince just had, again, take it all away. Take it all away. The BS, the all the crap with him, the really nasty allegations and the stuff he's gotten into present day. That mind, without that, we would not have wrestling of what we have today. So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for that in that aspect, because I wouldn't have anything to grow up
that part of him.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, in that part of him. But the question I have, and I don't want to start going into the second and third episodes, but it's just like, I want to know the question. It's just like, at what point did you kind of wake up and realize not you're untouchable, but you can kind of mask everything behind this Mr. McMahon gimmick? And like, we don't know who the hell you are. Maybe deep down, this guy is some gummy bear, soft jellyfish kind of yellow guy, but lives the Mr. McMahon life because he can use it as a facade. It's just so weird.
I don't buy it.
At what aspect? You think this? So you think the Mr. McMahon, again, I don't want that episode, but the Vince McMahon part of it. You think the Mr. McMahon part, the character, how much of that on a scale of 1 to 10 do you think is actually Vince McMahon?
8.
Okay.
I have a reasoning for it.
No, give me a reason. Jess, you're next.
Okay, I have a reasoning for it. I'm sorry, Jess.
No,
all three of us have personalities. We all have who we are at home, who we are in public, who we are at work. And they're not very far off from each other in terms of differences.
Right.
I'm the same person at home that I am at work, with the exception of not trying to die at work.
Yeah, I was going to say, a little different.
To be the Mr. McMahon character that he portrayed on TV for two decades, to completely turn that off is exhausting. It's got to be. So I believe that he's not too far from where he was as a real person. I think he probably just amplified certain aspects of his personality and his life to where we got Mr. McMahon. I don't see him being this cuddly love bug kind of guy that then on Monday nights he's doing the McMahon strut and he's taking off his shirt and he's ripping $5,000 suits and he's getting in the ring,
making people kiss his ass.
Right. He's making Trish Stratus bark like a dog, like all this stuff to me, and I'm like, this is probably just Vince on 10, as opposed to him being completely different. It's not like one of those situations where it's Kane, who is the 7-foot giant from hell on TV, and then now we know that he's one of the nicest human beings.
Yep.
You'll ever, take the politics out of it. He's a very nice human being in general. And I don't want to get into that because I don't talk politics with anybody. My dad taught me to never talk politics, never talk religion, but there's no deciphering the difference of what is real and what's entertainment because Vince is a larger than life person, no matter how you shake it. Because what we were just talking about a couple of minutes ago, he is wrestling personified. When you think of WWE, the first person you think about is not Hulk Hogan, is not Stone Cold, it's not The Undertaker.
It's Vince McMahon.
It's Vince McMahon, for better or for worse. He is the person that made the company what it is. And it's reached unparalleled heights in the age of social media where these wrestlers are just doing a job on television because you see who they are through their social media accounts.
Before you answer, Jess, what I guess I'm trying to say is not so much that he goes home and he's a cuddly love bug and he loves everybody and he cuddles his grandkids. Do you think what I guess I was trying to ask is, do you think the McMahon persona is to cover up insecurities, the trauma, all the BS?
Absolutely. It's a coping mechanism.
Thank you. That's kind of what I was kind of getting at.
It's a coping mechanism.
Right.
For he's got to be somebody that he believes he should be in order to not be vulnerable and be the person that he might be if he were to allow those inner thoughts and the inner demons to take it over and consume him. He is who he is because he didn't let it consume him.
Gotcha. Jess, what do you think?
I think he is who he is. I think he is who he portrays. I think the shit that he comes up with on the wrestling and the shit that he did during the Attitude Era and all that stuff, I just think he's a sick fuck. And I think that that's who he is. I mean, I'm sure it'll come up in one of the episodes. I think it does, or I'm not sure if it does, but the Attitude Era, when he wanted to be the father of his fucking daughter's baby. Like,
that's the fourth one. That's the fourth. I didn't watch it, but it said
I didn't watch it either. I didn't watch it either. And I just had seen clips of it on Twitter. So I know it comes up eventually, but who the fuck pitches something like that?
Him.
Like,
well, Steffi's got a record of saying that she's like, I told him I don't want to do that.
She said that was only the second time she ever told him no. The clip that I saw.
He put his own daughter in a storyline where she was getting cranked up on the
Ministry of Darkness.
The Ministry of Darkness symbol and being hung over the ring. She was drugged and kidnapped
and married to Triple H.
Right. Like
that was just foreshadowing, but
it was the foreshadowing. But the thing is, if he's willing to do that, him pitching an idea that he's the father of Stephanie's baby is completely conceivable.
This was also the man who was jacked up. Don't know if he was on the roids at his age. And also beat the shit out of his daughter in an I Quit match to take over, to see if she'd keep her job as GM of SmackDown. Like this we can go on and on for another hour.
He also dismissed CTE in one of the episodes. So for Benoit of all people.
The Kane storyline where Triple H was like, I got to do what? And he's like, yeah, put the mask on and do it. And he's like, what are we doing? It's a dead body. Like the whole Katie Vick issue with Kane. Like it only came from one man, one guy, the mind of one man. And it's funny because he's quoted in this episode as saying, everything we did, we looked at the headlines and no one's talking about necrophilia, my man. I don't know where you're doing that out of.
There was no necrophilia in the headlines. That was just you, bro.
And if there is,
he lived out a lot of his sick fantasies through the booking of that
right
show.
There.
Yeah,
that right there.
Like vicariously, we saw a lot of things that Vince McMahon wanted to do in his life. Because
as adults, we sit back and look at the Attitude Era, and the first thing I think about is like that was some gnarly shit. Like
nowadays, that would never.
We were watching.
Like
we were watching at like between the ages of 12 to 16. This
I was
the shit that we're watching.
I was 10 years old in the Attitude Era.
What?
I was 10 years old in the Attitude Era. So I'm a fan of Al Snow. I'm running around school and everybody loves Head. I don't even know what that means. It's just catchy, and I thought it was funny. Like, you get in-school suspensions for telling people to suck it. I'm like, Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
I think the biggest thing is, and I don't know if they talk about it in the episodes. Again, I only got a couple of them, but I think the biggest glaring thing, and I don't want to start a whole thing, but I just want to touch on it because we're talking about the fantasies and what Vince liked, and you really see how he was through the storylines because he was so much in control. You can't put the blame on anybody else. But the way that Booker T was treated in the Triple H run to WrestleMania in the title match, the things that were said to Booker T, the Kerwin White angle, and just other things that were done. The Cena one where he walks by and says a certain word to Cena when walking away from him says a lot about this man. Like these storylines of how African Americans were treated in these storylines, and Triple H, like people like you don't get to do what I do. And Triple H has said, I didn't want to say that line, but it was in the script. I had to do it. Like it's just no. All I'm saying is, at the end of the day, wherever it happened, Vince could have either been like, no much.
Let's not let this version of Triple H whitewash what
convolute what he was.
He doesn't get past. No, he doesn't. No. I agree.
He's a visionary right now in terms of what wrestling is. He has the pulse of it under his thumb, and that's fine. But Triple H was propped up
also
more
a
than
giant prick.
He was propped up more than anybody else during the reign that McMahon had. Yeah. Maybe you can argue Cena, maybe you can argue Orton. To a certain degree, you can argue Austin. But they were all very short-lived. They were all short-lived time periods, even The Rock. But the one consistent person, the one constant has always been Triple H. He's been in front of the camera in an authority role, a wrestling role, a split role, and now he's got the keys to the kingdom. So let's not forget that he said that shit to Booker T. Let's not forget that he used his positioning with Stephanie. I don't care how many times they can tell us until they're blue in the face that it wasn't that way. You're the boss's son-in-law.
Oh yeah, it was that way. But he got so much shit from the boys. Oh, absolutely, dude. Yeah.
I don't care. Yeah. I don't like. You can tell me. You can tell me shit is. Yep. I was born in the day, but not yesterday. Come on, like it's insane to me. And just with the racial connotations that Vince had, he was playing out his thought process on live television with other people.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still clear in 2024. And I'm not trying to get on a soapbox or a podium about the racial aspect of it, but we've in the last 5 years is when you've really started to see WWE being taken over by African American champions of all the titles.
Yep.
And then they had to do it because they were called out on it on social media of all places. It wasn't because it was by choice. They're saying it was
right. It wasn't genuine.
It was disingenuous, like Jess just said, because of what was going on. And there's no denying it. Booker T was one of the hottest acts of WCW coming over to the company. And the first night Booker T is on television, what does The Rock say to him? Who in the blue hell are you?
Hottest act out of WCW. 5-time champion.
One of the best tag team wrestlers ever.
Harlem Heat, baby.
Harlem Heat.
Yeah, baby.
Booker had the charisma. He had the mic skills. He had natural athletic ability. He could wrestle and he could tell a story. And he was captivating every time that you saw that fire and the music start. You knew you were getting entertained. And The Rock buried him his first night on WWE television. To me,
nothing too. I mean, he did bury Jericho too, but but
Jericho was not the level Booker T was either. But yeah, Jericho
Rock's also an egotistical asshole.
Exactly, but the thing is, Vince knew what he was doing because the person he had doing it was The Rock. The Rock is wrestling royalty. He always has been. It's the bloodline, for a lack of a better term.
The original head of the table.
So I love Triple H now because of what he's doing. And I love Shawn Michaels for what he's done with NXT and the NIL deals. But the same way Vince, on a much smaller scale, I don't forget how those dudes were. And
no, I agree. They don't get passes. If you know what
HBK is the greatest wrestler of all time, but he was also one of the biggest douchebags in the business. And now that you got NXT being hot again,
I think he actually says it. I don't know if it's this. I don't know if it's this episode or if it's one of the other ones. He's like, I was kind of a dick.
He was like, I was a prick. I was a prick.
It's the Bret Hart episode. We'll talk about that next week. It's the Bret Hart episode.
Kind of a prick.
He's like, I'm a prick.
You were. That was. If you look
that
into
cockiness, was not. There was no turning up HBK. That Heartbreak Kid, that was Shawn.
That was him.
Absolutely.
That was him, baby. If he tries to tell anyone otherwise, it's bullshit. No. Yeah. That was Shawn Michaels all day. He was the Heartbreak Kid in his head. It was.
But the thing is, that's why we're seeing what we're seeing right now with the company.
Yep.
The years of railroading people and positioning themselves, they've been at the top of the card for so long that now they know how the shit works from there all the way down. So of course they're going to know how to run the business. Yeah. HBK has got NXT outperforming another company altogether.
Yep.
So
facts. Demos don't lie, baby. So I'm basically I covered everything I wanted to talk about. I guess the biggest thing is I don't want to get too ahead of myself and talk about what were your thoughts? I'll tell you what, we'll go with this and then we'll go final state. But what was one of your favorite interviews or what are the controversial? What were some of your takeaways as far as interviews or people that were talking? Like, what was one of your favorites as far as interviews or things that you heard said or kind of what you want to talk about? A takeaway, I guess, from the episode. Maybe from Hogan. It could have been
Jess,
from.
You go first because I know what I'm going to say, but
okay.
Just I'll turn it.
You know, it was very Hogan centric.
Yes. It was.
There was a good, probably 45% of that episode that was more about Hogan than about McMahon.
Yeah.
I learned a lot of things that I didn't know before. I didn't know that he was fired for doing Rocky 3. Had no idea. And, you know, like was said in the beginning, I can't remember who said it. I think it was John, but Hulk Hogan, Vince McMahon made Hulk Hogan. I can't remember who necessarily said that, but he made Hulk Hogan who he was. And Hulk Hogan was a fucking household name. Everybody knew who Hulk Hogan was. He had, even if you didn't watch wrestling, you knew who Hulk Hogan was. And, you know, Vince had a lot to do with getting WWF started and getting it popular, but Hogan had a lot to do with it. I don't think had he had Hogan, it would have been as successful as it was in the beginning. And, you know, that kind of comes into play in episodes 2 and 3, but it just wasn't. It wouldn't have been. And, you know, Hogan is a giant piece of shit, too. So, you know, we can't, you know.
Birds of a feather.
We'll talk about that next
together. Absolutely.
Next week, we get the shit on Hogan.
And then.
Yeah.
So. I didn't know Richard Belzer had his own talk show back in the day, though. That was
neither did I.
So that I looked into that. So
I was like, Munch had his own talk show.
I remember Munch when he was on the Homicide.
I want to talk about how old, like the difference between. We got 10 years between. She's like, why does he like? That's Munch from Law and Order.
I don't know how old you are, John. I'll
be 40 this year.
Okay. I'll be 40 in January.
I'm the baby on the show. Okay.
I see you. But I looked into that. So Meltzer, actually, the reason he settled.
Oh shit! Meltzer, God.
Not Meltzer. I'm sorry. Belzer.
Richard
sorry.
Belzer.
Don't even get me in Meltzer. I didn't even bring him up this episode.
I got indigestion when I hear
2
his
and
name.
3. That man. Wait, number 1, the first episode. The first one, I was like, okay, cool. He's gonna be cool about it. He's not gonna 2 and 3.
And then he turned into a giant douche,
vomiting. I'm like, Meltzer, shut up. I'm sick. Anyway, but that being said, Belzer settled because when they went to court, they were like, so did you tell him to put you in that hold on live TV? Well, yeah. And they're like, okay, so he put the hold on you, and unfortunately you fell. Well, yeah, we put the hold on me. Yeah, you asked him to. The reason he settled is because he was going to lose, So he just
Yeah.
settled out of court, took some money, and left.
Oh
'Cause
yeah,
I
absolutely.
looked into it, and I'm like, why would he settle? He knocked him up. It's because he's like, hey, why don't you put a hold on me on his show? And pretty much the attorneys were like, you asked for it, and that's what happened. You passed out. I'm sorry, but you passed out. Like, whatever. Anyway, but I digress. Matt, what was your answer to that?
I kind of along the same lines as Jess. Hogan's a giant piece of shit.
It's a general consensus of
It's
everybody.
a general consensus, and I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole of a conspiracy theory, but the more you connect dots and the more you start to listen to Hogan and McMahon talk, especially on the same episode, it is completely a conceivable notion that McMahon sent Hogan to WCW to trash that place. And that's not out of the realm of possibility.
No, you're not wrong.
So that's like Jess and I said, two birds of a feather, and it's like Hogan believes his bullshit almost as much as Vince believes his.
He told him after he went to the court when he testified in front of the jury. He's like when he ended up swerving the government and said no steroids, and he looked at Vince. He goes, "We go up together, we go down together." That tells you all you need to know.
Right.
That he swerved the government with full immunity, and he still went in front and went, nope.
I mean, they are linked together in this industry forever. Vince made Hulkamania, and Hulkamania made WWF into WWE what it was. And you cannot Google WWE without something about Hulk Hogan being present with Vince McMahon. Yeah. Those two names are synonymous to one another. So I really didn't like the fact that they gave Hogan this platform, because this is the last thing this douchebag needed.
Where do you see episode 2?
I'm gonna watch it tomorrow because I'm hooked on it.
Next week we'll do 2, 3, and 4. But wait till you it. Yeah,
I'll text you when I'm done watching it. But I have a problem with it that the first episode you featured everybody that has an axe to grind about something with the wrestling community, with the company. Like, okay, Atlas had a lot to say about Pat Patterson. He had, Hart is the most bitter human being that's ever wrestled in a wrestling ring before. And then you got Hogan, who if you put them two together in the same room and there was one chair, Hogan would sit on his lap.
As far as like people having axes to grind, episode 3 probably is the one that pissed me off the most, and you'll see what I'm talking about when you watch it. It's just like, and Jess knows what I'm talking about. It's just like they go over a couple people that they go over a guy he's been gunning for WWE since the 80s, and just it's just some of the people that get on here. I'm like, why did we do this? What, so they can get their last soapbox shot at saying what they want to say about WWE? Like, this isn't what this doesn't tell me about McMahon. It teaches me about how people hated McMahon. We get that.
With my feelings on the first episode, they reeled me in because of the contempt that I have for Hogan and Bret Hart.
Yeah,
on a fandom level.
Yeah.
Oh, just wait.
Yeah, Bret. To me, Bret Hart is like the epitome of what the old school wrestlers think. He just says the shit, and that's where I'm at with that. Hart's vocal enough to say, "This is how I feel about this. Social media ruined this. Kayfabe died with the curtain call." All the guys think it. He's just brave enough to say.
The guy's saying it because he has nothing to lose at this point. Now he's just like, "I'll say it. I'll catch headlines."
And he's working us in a shoot to the grave with the whole Montreal screw job. They all knew about it. Like that's the shit that kills me, is that Bret has such an axe to grind, but he's part of one of the biggest swerves in history of the professional wrestling industry.
And this man was just on Raw a month ago. And that's the thing with and the thing with Hogan. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Hogan actually just re-upped with the WWE for 5 more years.
And so did Mick Foley.
So I think this thing with Hogan, I thought about this. I watched the 3 episodes. I kind of try to like you do, Matt. Like I know Jess does it too. Like kind of like, why would they put that on there? But it's just like, oh, they want to make Hogan look like a good guy, and he was always with Vince, and he loved his WWE, and because he just came back, and at some point they're gonna bring him back on TV. So it's just
they know he knows things.
Yeah, well, that's the thing too. There's a couple people where I work, like they've been there 22 years. They don't get fired because they know everything. Hogan knows where the bodies are.
Hogan knows shit. Ric Flair fucking knows shit.
Yeah, that's why Hogan's like, I ran to Vince and I told him. I said, hey.
and to build off of that, Jess and John, this is going to make sense to you as well. The two people we just named, or Jess just named, Hogan and Flair. There's a reason why he still maintains that record for most heavyweight championship runs in the history of professional
and no one's
wrestling.
beat it.
And when in this day and age, it's conceivable that you could have had Roman Reigns get to 10 in the time frame that he had both titles for the 3 years.
And Cena's going. Cena's on a return.
Cena's on a retirement tour. He might tie it, but I doubt Cena breaks it.
Will beat it.
No, he's tied right now.
I thought he had 15.
I think he's tied.
I think he's tied right now.
He's
okay.
Tied.
So that's
why
conceivable.
Someone asked him one time. They're like, so he's like, oh, I told him no. I'm like, I don't think.
How much money do you think it's going to take the WWE to pay Ric Flair to not make a stink about not being the greatest world champion ever acknowledged in wrestling? And then there's a reason why the machine's running the way it's running. There's never going to be another Hulk Hogan.
No.
The crossover platform ended with Cena.
Yeah.
Batista might
Reigns
be there.
Is the closest you can get to, like, obviously the
Reigns has been in a couple
movies,
but Hogan is pop culture.
Yep. No, agreed. Yep.
Hogan's pop culture. There's nobody that you can look at WWE in the last 10 years that's pop culture, and you can maybe say Cena. Maybe.
Yeah, he put out like I think 4 movies when he was the Thugonomics. He put out those first 4 movies,
the Marine movies. But now he's in the Fast and Furious franchise. Yep. He's in the Marvel universe or the DC.
He's everywhere now.
Yeah, he's everywhere. Yeah. He's doing commercials. He's doing radio ads. He's doing all that.
Yep.
Yeah, voiceovers.
But there's a reason why, because they can control everything in that universe.
Yep.
There's never going to be another one of either one of those guys because Flair is larger than life. Flair's in rap videos and shit. He's got a weed line. He's,
Ric Flair drip, baby.
Every NFL locker room uses his catchphrase. The 2 claps near Ric Flair is like a hype thing for NFL teams.
Yep.
He's, so you're never going to get that. And those 2 know where all the bodies are. Literally every single one.
Absolutely. In both companies. Jesus.
Yeah. So, because Vince built WCW because of the people that were over there.
Yep. So, I agree.
And that's the thing that I was thinking about last night. Sorry, this is kind of off topic, but it's not off topic. Is when you talk about WCW being built off of all the people that came from WWF, that's just like today, AEW is being built off of the wrestlers from the WWF as well. In a way.
I agree with you, Jess, but I'm going to pretty much say what I always say on every wrestling show I've ever been on. AEW is an indie outlaw mud show with a TV contract. WCW was selling out the same arenas that WWF was, and was just as hot. The whole 83 weeks thing, the Monday Night Wars, the shit that all of us loved.
Mm-hmm.
AEW is not ever going to be in the stratosphere that WCW was. You can say longevity, they beat them in terms of popularity against WWE, but let's nobody on this show is going to sit there and say that anything that AEW is doing is better than what they're doing over in WWE. And I hate AEW, but it's because of their owner. Their owner can't get out of his own way.
I just said that an hour ago on me and Vinny's show. You're in your own way. Please step aside. Before I talk, Jess, go ahead. You had your hand up.
No, I was just saying I love AEW. So I watch AEW over WWE television generally.
And that's fine. I don't judge anybody for that, Jess.
But I see what you're saying in the same aspect. Like, they're having a hard time filling arenas. They're having a hard time getting asses in the seats. unless it's a huge show. If they've got a big show, they do a decent job.
Yeah.
But even at Wembley, those red seats were not doing them any fucking favors.
And the thing is, I do watch AEW to a degree. I don't do the pay-per-views because I'm so accustomed to the $10 a month to have them at my fingertips that I'm not gonna. I mean, every streaming site that I have is now blocked. It's crazy.
I'll shoot you one.
Cool. I like the concept of AEW, of what they originally were built on as an alternative to WWE. But a couple of years ago, when every single title holder that AEW had was a product
was an
of
EVP.
Was either the EVP era, and then every title that held they had major titles when they resuscitated Ring of Honor. Your first champions, Cesaro, and then Jericho held it. It's like you're propping all this up on the backs of WWE talent, but you want to be the alternative to WWE. So to me, it was a double-edged sword. I love the concept of AEW more than I actually enjoy watching it. I think it's not a very well-produced show because I'm comparing it to what I've been watching for 20 years of my life over here with the WWE. And now I'll be the first to say this. I'm thankful for AEW because WWE was the drizzling shits for 10 years.
I'd stop watching wrestling.
Step their game up, baby.
Competition brings out the best in that organization over there. WCW being popular, we got the Attitude Era. When AEW was selling out Wembley the first go around, and they were selling out Chicago, they brought in Punk, they brought in Danielson, they brought in all these original people. Cody did the whole throne thing, and you had this edgy new product. Now they countered that with the Bloodline. They countered that with the Fiend. They countered that with, so many different things. The Judgment Day, Rhea, the Charlotte Flair. You can pull anything. I'm thankful for AEW in that manner. But right now, me being a pragmatic wrestling fan, and Jess, it's not no ill will because you say you love AEW. I think that Tony Khan does not have any control in that locker room. He is a billionaire. He's a billionaire playing with real life toys. And to me, if you've got Cody already back in WWE, you've got Ricky Starks that's bound for them. Penta and Phoenix are heading over there. Malachi Black's contract is coming up soon. If you believe what came out today on the dirt sheets.
Yep.
If you're losing a lot of your pillars,
Ethan Page,
Pillman Jr., not to a lesser degree Pillman Jr., but
yeah.
How does it look to your fan base when the guys that helped you build this are now jumping ship?
My biggest thing is
because what they're getting back from WWE is not equating to what they're losing.
I think the problem is, and I think I've said this before, and Jess knows this, I'm equal opportunity for both. I like AEW. I pay for their pay-per-views. I watch them weekly. I watch WWE PLEs on Peacock. I'm equal opportunity. I'll call it how it is, good or bad. The problem with AEW is Tony Khan. And I mean that because Tony Khan is trying to follow the Monday Night War blueprint. But the problem is you have Ted Turner money. You don't have Eric Bischoff mind. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to knock on Tony Khan, but you don't have the Eric Bischoff mind. If you want to sign all these guys with the money, it's just like Ted Turner was like, how much you want? You want $5 million a year? Cool. How many days you want to work? 110? Cool. You're in. Let's go. But you had Eric Bischoff who came, again, not a wrestling guy, but was like, I have a checklist. Okay, they're not doing this, they're not doing this, they're not doing this. I'm going to do this, this, and this. Tony is doing the same thing WWE is as a sidestep. He needs to put people around him that can make those decisions for him, step back, and just run the company. If Tony does that and builds a developmental with Ring of Honor, that company will thrive in 2 to 3 years. This WBD deal where they can stream on True TV and on Max and all these other ones, this is his saving time and grace for him to get Ring of Honor back up and running, to make that the NXT of AEW, Put who you want down there. Put
Mm-hmm.
some big stars. Put your green guys down there. Make that the NXT. That's the one thing AEW's missed. I've been saying it for 2 years now. You make it developmental. You make something that looks like NXT. People go, oh, that's like NXT. And it's Ring of Honor, a name that has been synonymous with wrestling for years.
Yeah.
Bring back Ring of Honor. That's the one thing that he bought it for the library, and it's dead. The titles mean nothing. Unfortunately, no disrespect. They don't. The show gets maybe here and there in a dark match if you go to an event. Ring of Honor got bought for a video library so Tony could use that when he does vignettes for the people he signed, like Brian Danielson, Mox, and all those guys. So, and Punk.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I'll say this, yeah.
Fucking
you're
Phil.
right. You know, yeah. You know, that to me, that's a dagger right there, Jess. You said that. And I don't want to go into another hour of this because we could talk about this all night.
no, we could. I know. I don't want to get
The
too far.
fact that you chased Phil back to WWE, the place he swore he'd never go, and he shit on.
That's
to me. That was the first nail, and this might be conjecture or just my personal opinion on it. If Kenny Omega doesn't have diverticulitis the last couple of years and dealing with those injuries, he's over there right now too. In present day, knowing they can stream, they can do their own brand, they can do the video games, knowing how much he loves the video games, they would have thrown a pretty penny at Omega, and Omega would be over there. And I'm not saying it because I like Kenny Omega. I think Kenny Omega is a fantastic wrestler.
Yeah,
but I think that he would have did the same thing Cody did because he saw the writing on the wall. The inmates are running the asylum over there, and it's a bad look because I want them to be successful. I don't want AEW to die like the rest of the tribalists do. I want them to be successful in their own way, and they have so many good things over there. But then you see so many things that are just like making you say, "Well, what the hell?" Case in point, Jess. I'm a huge Ricochet fan. I love Ricochet. I don't care where that man wrestles. I'm a fan of him. I liked him in Lucha. I liked him in NXT, WWE main roster.
He's just phenomenal.
He's a phenomenal dude. Only thing is he has the charisma of a wet paper bag, but you've already got him fighting Ospreay
for the international. Yeah.
For
free.
Me,
That's the problem. For free.
So
TV.
to me, that's money. Yeah. You're like I equate that to what Hogan said when they wanted him to drop the WCW heavyweight title to Goldberg on Nitro. He's like, we're not doing that on free television. We're going to make money doing this. So, you got everybody still watches that YouTube video of them wrestling 10 years ago. So to me, the first thing you're going to do is within 2 months of him being in the company, you've already got him wrestling him on free television. After that, what?
Right. Where does he go from here?
Right.
I'm not anticipating AEW to be storyline driven like WWE is, but I just want it to make sense. I want it to make sense, and I can get with it. Make it make sense to me. If I'm sitting there watching your show, make it make sense, at least to some varying degree.
Yeah,
like
sense.
The people that have been propping that company up now are 55 and 60-year-old wrestlers for 2 years. Jericho, Christian, Sting, like, come on.
Big Christian fan. I'm a big Christian Cage fan.
So am I. And he's doing his best work right now. The best work of his career is right now. And I will die on that cross.
Yep.
Christian Cage is doing the Lord's work right now when it comes to his mic work and his in-ring.
He's doing great work, dude.
But the thing is, when you look at that and then you look at Sting having his farewell, Jericho still being Jericho, and then you're looking at like the rest of it, and it's like you got MJF. I think MJF is losing steam right now.
Yeah, he's not as hot as he was when
he's not as hot as he was when he came back.
I'm a huge MJF fan.
And I think he did his best work with Adam Cole, who can't get out of his own, injury
wheelchair.
So, and who knows where Adam Cole's head's going to be? Allegedly, Britt left him and all that shit. But not to take over the show, John, or anything. But I don't have a problem with AEW just the way other WWE fans do. I still criticize WWE for some stuff that they do
Mhm.
because to me, this whole bloodline thing has fallen flat with Solo. And
Oh, he's terrible.
Yeah, you can't get Jimmy back, Roman back. You can't get all that whole thing quick enough. This can't happen.
Right.
War Games can't happen quick enough. Mania can't happen quick enough.
You got to suck Jay back into that situation too. Maybe Sammy, and
maybe yeah.
you know,
Let's get a good War Games match
or something else. I mean, they just signed their younger brother, Lakulo, or whatever his name.
He's like 7 feet tall.
Yeah, he's on the NXT roster right now.
Yep.
Zilly Fatu is no showing events, hoping he can go to WWE. So to me, it's like, okay, if The Rock isn't going to be back anytime soon, you can kind of chill on this shit for a little bit. Because right now, all it's been is Judgment Day and the Bloodline. That's all we're getting, and then the Cody aspect of it. I'm truly underwhelmed with Cody's reign right now. He doesn't have that definitive marquee win as a defending champion yet. They're trying.
I like Cody. I'm a big. That's why I started watching AEW, and that's why when he left, I went, "Oh, you're the reason there's an AEW. Why are you?" And then then the documentary came out and everything. But that's why I'm a big fan. Not to make this like a AEW WWE show, but like me and Vinny were talking about earlier. Like I love this new faction with Mox, with Pac. Like I can't wait to see where this goes. I'm hoping Shane McMahon's involved. Like I have a lot of thoughts on where that's going to happen. But I like how now AEW someone went, like group things working over there. We should make a group and we should make it make sense here. And I think it's going to be awesome for them and great TV for AEW. And if this group is done the right way headed by Mox, I think it's going to be great, great stuff.
Mox is cool, but Mox went so far in the other direction of who he was in WWE. Like he wanted to break free of the chains.
He's also sober now. I mean, I don't know if
I hear you.
You know what I mean? I don't know if that has anything
but I'm not saying it as a person. I think he's a fantastic person from every interview I've ever seen him do. Yeah. But to me, Mox is the epitome of I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want to do and get paid millions of dollars for it. There's no accountability to Mox because he's one of the first. He's the first big name that jumped ship.
He did, yeah. All or nothing, right?
Yeah.
All or nothing? Yep. So, with all that being said, obviously we all talked about episode 1. We're not really talking. Some of us have watched 2, 3, or 4. Without talking about what you've seen, but what you haven't seen in the episodes. What is one thing that you want to see that you want to get out of this documentary that you want to know or have a hankering for, or something like a piece of knowledge that you want to know about at the end? But when you're done with all six of these episodes, what's the one thing you want to walk away from? We know Vince, we know the scandals, we know all this other stuff. What's the one thing you want to walk away from not knowing when you started watching this? Jess, I'll start with you.
No, Matt, you go first so I can think.
Okay. I was thinking too.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Bang!
The thing I'm looking forward to, having not seen episodes 2 through 6, is this going to be such a fluff piece about Vince and what's going on and the people that love Vince and prop him up? I want to hear some things from people about how they really feel. Like, other than Brett, other than Meltzer, like, I want to see if there's somebody that he made famous that is really going to speak their truth on this matter.
It's going to come out and be like, I fucking hate this guy.
Right. Atlas kind of did it in the first episode where he said he thought Vince hated his dad. And, Atlas has a lot of things to say about a lot of people. The dress shirt with the no sleeves is off-putting, but but I want to have shock value, because I feel like this is going to be a regurgitation and a different presentation to the same shit we already know.
All right, cool. Jess, what do you think?
I'm kind of on the same level of that. I think I want to see more dirt, and I want to see more truth. I don't want it to be the Vince McMahon interpretation of Vince McMahon. I want it to be an honest, truthful, other people's interpretation on Vince McMahon. Like, I don't want something that it to be something that Vince wrote, basically, and told them to say. Or because some of that shit that Hogan was saying, it's like, dude, you guys hated each other for years. Like, for years, y'all hated each other.
I'm like, what are we doing? Like, I love this. Shut up. No, you don't.
I love Vince. I'd do anything for Vince. Like, really? Because that wasn't the same song you were singing a few years ago. Like, exactly. And now all of a sudden they put you on the documentary and you're all like, oh, I love that man. He's the greatest, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Oh, something just popped in my head. Why did he continue the pay-per-view after Owen died?
Well, there's a whole thing about that too, the whole Owen conspiracy. You've heard that, right?
Yeah.
So this was obviously after Brett left, the thing with Owen happened. There's a conspiracy that the Owen thing was set up.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's touched on in any of the other episodes that are coming up, but I want to know what made him
they
do that.
Not to ruin it for anyone who hasn't seen it or not. They talk about it. They don't ask him why. They don't. But you guys are good?
Yeah.
My thing is, and I don't know, you guys obviously know a lot, you read a lot, you hear a lot of stuff. My thing is, so we talked about his dad, right? Why are we not talking about so exactly what Jess just said, and Matt, you've touched on it too. That I think Vinny said something about this too. I think WWE, this is supposed to be a grab to people who go to Netflix. Oh, I can catch WWE and Netflix. I'm waiting for an ad to talk about Raw in episode 4. Catch Raw, January 2025. But the thing with me is, so you guys know about the Playboy interview with Vince McMahon about what happened with his mom, right? He was sexually abused by his mother.
Oh, shit.
So I don't want to get into it. Why are we not talking about that? This is what I mean. If we're going to do this, I'm trying to learn about Vince and Kenny McMahon and whatever trauma you had. And I get it. No one wants to hear that. But I thought this
it would supersede everything else.
Exactly.
So why supersede everything else? And it would totally make Vince a sympathetic person in all this.
But it's
and
I feel like it's going to what you got. We're cherry picking. We're gonna go, okay, you didn't know your dad, you did that. Okay. We gotta talk about it all. You don't have to go into detail like they did it. You talk, we can talk about it, brush over it, but we need to like encompass everything.
Like they completely left it out.
Yeah, like, I don't know if it pops up in the next.
This documentary started when he turned 12.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And it was when he's in the trailer park, like he said, alone. Yes, the stepfather that beat him, but it was, if you read the interview, there's a lot of stuff that goes in there. I mean, look it up. You can Google it. You can read it. But it's just like, we're cherry picking here. Like I don't want to see, like, I don't want to drag out all his damn dirty laundry. I don't want to see the guy dragged out through the mud and all the BS pulled out, because that stuff's going to happen. But I think, and not to get ahead of myself to talk about what's going to happen in this episode, because I haven't seen all of them yet. I think personally, maybe I'm wrong, the way whatever happened when he was younger with that, I think the way he's treated women in the ring, on TV, in real life, is something to do with what happened when he was younger with his mom. And that's some therapy shit. That's some deep, dark, unlocking doors and getting laundry out of his head. But I think that needs to be talked about. It can't be missed over, because I think at the end of the day, when it was all said and done, if you put him on a lie detector test, you give him some truth serum, something that happened in that trailer, whatever that time of period, affected him in some way, and he has some kind of weird, like, aside from the control, but some weird thing with doing things to women as like a, what's the word I'm looking for?
Hurt people,
humiliating them,
getting back at retaliatory.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you know what? And he has a really thing with women.
Hurt people.
Again, I don't want to go down that. Get ahead of myself. I'm sure we'll talk. I think 4 or 5 talks about stuff in the ring and stuff, but I think that needs to be talked about. I don't need to talk about details and make the man cry on television, on camera about it. But it needs to be talked about, man. Like, did stuff happen with your mom? Okay, cool. We move on. We don't talk about details. He gave it in the Playboy interview. But I think that has something to do, honestly, looking at it as a man and as a person who probably hasn't had therapy, then I think that has something to do with how you see Trish Stratus barking like a dog and dancing on tables and getting his pants pulled down in the locker room. I think it was him being, again, the control freak and just getting back at like whatever kind of damage he had. That's just my personal
Well,
opinion.
and his main focus towards women was just sexualizing them.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It was just about sexualizing them. Bra and
Yeah,
panties matches, bikini contests, Sable with the
Making out with them
handprints.
in the locker room. Yep.
Hey,
Making out with them.
That was cinema.
That was cinema.
When that happened on pay-per-view, all of us were like, but
I'm back.
I think this episode was good. I think they did. Could it be a fluff piece? Only the next 5 episodes will tell us that. I think we learned a lot. Again, they talked a lot about what WWE was for Americana, what it is in pop culture, and hopefully, as we move on, we kind of get more into the in-depth parts of what Vince McMahon, the man, is, aside from the Mr. McMahon persona he played on television. So, guys, I really appreciate you coming and talk about it. Vinny, you're not here, but thank you. Matt, Jess, I appreciate it. Jess, where could everyone find you when you're not on here talking with us?
Everybody can find me at Jess Skywalker 10 on X and on YouTube under the Lowdown with Princess Skywalker.
Beautiful. Awesome. And again, Jess, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it and having your insight.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Matt, where can everyone find you when you're not talking wrestling with us?
Right now you can find me on my I'm on Facebook. Just look up my name, Matt Trigger. It would be a picture of me and Odell Beckham Jr. At his football camp. On X, you can find me at BWATB Podcast. It's going to be changing soon. I'm kind of doing a rebrand now that I've been, signed over. On TikTok, it's Matt_Believe in Ravens Pod, all one word. The Believe is BLEAV for those of you that don't follow me yet. But I'm on Instagram, mtrig89. Got a lot of stuff that I'm pumping out on there as well for the pod. I'm on Believe in Ravens podcast with Daniel Wilcox, former player for the Baltimore Ravens. Every Wednesday night at 9:00, we release our episodes, and then we do a show immediately after the game. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. And again, Matt, thank you so much for joining me. I always appreciate your input when it comes to wrestling and stuff like that. I really appreciate taking the time.
Thank you for having me, Jess. It was a pleasure meeting you. A fantastic
Absolutely,
wrestling
you too.
mind.
Guys, awesome. And as always, I'm John Anthony. You guys can find me at all media on X, YouTube, Instagram, Twitch, all at Chairshot Sports. Guys, we'll be right back here next week talking about episodes 2, 3, and 4 of the Miss McMahon documentary now airing on Netflix. So for Matt and for Jess, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.